when I was at BBH, every Sunday evening or Monday morning, you would walk in excited about the prospect of, doing some great work on some of these great brands. I mean, there was a high standard generally, but pretty much 30% of the briefs you could get on any Monday morning would be for one of these pedigree accounts. And you kind of go, there's such a privilege. On our first day at BBH, the head of sort of creative services came in and said, what you've got to understand about BBH is we learn from our clients and we share the same values. So we've learned from Audi the importance of a production line, and we are a factory for fame.
Hi and welcome to another episode of Untalented. Today I'm joined by Toby Allen, the partner and chief creative officer of T&PM. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good. No, thank you for joining us. I'm excited to get into it. But yeah, kick things off with our first question. Who is the first person to make you feel talented?
I think it was, I had two teachers at primary school and secondary school. And the first one was really good at driving people. He was quite sarcastic. I wouldn't advocate that as a sort of motivational technique, but it kind of worked with a bunch of 10-year-olds. And he just raised our game collectively. So not necessarily made me feel talented, but he got the best out of people with quite unconventional methods. And then a second teacher, English teacher at secondary school, who was just so effervescent and loved his subject matter. He loved English. He loved English literature. And I think he saw something in me and really encouraged that and sort of seized on that. And that in a roundabout way kind of led me to advertising, because I was studying English literature at A-level, read William Faulkner As I Lay Dying, which is a brilliant novel with fractured viewpoints. So every chapter is told from the point of view of a different character. And then when I saw John Webster's Guardian Points of View, I kind of saw he'd done in 30 seconds. Webster had done in 30 seconds for The Guardian what William Faulkner had spent a whole novel doing.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that is an art form. They're both based on the same premise that no point of view is reliable. And someone's been able to do that in a 30-second film. It feels like a 60 or a 90 when you're watching it, but it's just 30 seconds. And I thought, if there is this thing called advertising and it can make works of art like that, then that is a great profession to be in. That's a great creative endeavor to be part of. So I kind of set my sights on advertising pretty much back end of school.
Okay.
I read English at university, and then I applied for grad schemes. So I kind of went in the wrong door. I just thought I'll just get into an ad agency, buy one of the grad schemes, and then I'll just move sideways. So I got on the grad scheme as an entry level sort of account executive at Abbott Mead Vickers, AMV. And after a while, I said, well, can I move across to the creative department? And back then, there's more fluidity now.
Yeah.
But back then, it just didn't exist. And AMV then was very much ivory towers. The creatives were the gods on the 7th floor. And I was just a very junior account exec. And so I went to Peter Suter, who's brilliant and encouraging, but also very fiercely proud of his creative department, and rightly so. And he basically said, what makes you think I would give, a graduate, who's been through loads of brilliant universities and all the rest of it, a chance in my creative department just because, they want one.
Yeah, because you're asking.
Right, and I've got people queuing around the block, sleeping on their friends' sofas, living off baked beans, just to get a placement here. You're going to have to work harder. So I resigned and started again as a creative.
God, that's mad, isn't it? That you have to fully take. I suppose it's like that moment of realization for you as well. Of been like, wait, I need to start almost from scratch, and kind of like respect that like change in there, if that makes sense, and going back into an agency with a fully different like mindset type of thing.
Yeah, I think I was only 2 years in, so I didn't feel like I was sacrificing that much, in terms of time spent or kind of salary. And I knew that what I learned would be valuable within the industry. I've got so much respect for, young creatives, or even not so young creatives, but junior creatives who are entering the industry, who've done something else and then have decided to become a creative. Maybe something else that's actually not related to advertising, maybe creative, adjacent to advertising, but not related. And they really have started again. And I've employed 2 or 3 in the last 18 months, partly because they're nice and they're good, but also because I just really value the conviction that they've shown, in wanting to do this and backing themselves. And I kind of feel that sort of self-backing needs reinforcement by backing from other people. So I've kind of been willing to give them a shot, and they've paid it back in dividends.
Yeah, I think it's that, like, it's probably you recognizing yourself in them and seeing that you just needed that opportunity and someone to say, like, I recognize almost the sacrifice you're making and how terrifying this is. I'm more than willing to support that and help that, as well as what else I see in you, I suppose, and being able to create a space for them. Yeah,
it is. I mean, I'm sure part of it is I recognize that in them, and part of it is, Jesus, you've risked a lot more than I did, because I'm sort of moving role within industry rather than starting again entirely. And so I have a lot of respect for that decision, and just the character it shows as well.
Yeah. Do you think that starting in the account side of things helped and like propelled you as a junior creative starting out?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, some of the best creative leads, Robert Saville started out as in account management in client services. Ben Priest as well. There are people who've made the transition and done it brilliantly. Maybe one day I'll be in that pantheon. But I think it just gives you a sense of kind of what the business pressures are, what the business problems are, how you solve for them, also how you talk the client's language. John Hegarty sort of does a brilliant sort of learning series on just don't go in and say something's really cool, or this is really exciting, or it's just like the clients don't care. Just tell them how it's going to solve their problem, tell them why it's right for their brand, and you kind of learn that. It's a sort of boot camp in how do you talk to clients in a language that they understand about the work that you're trying to make. And I think that's learning that language, and I guess it's on 3 at the sort of linguistic level. It's just like, can you speak the language? So you have a shared understanding. Then there's, do you understand the business so you can solve for the problems? And then if you do both of those, you just create an atmosphere of trust in which risk can be taken. And we'll probably talk about body form later, but my biggest role on that was earning the client's trust so that we could actually take the risks that led to progressively bolder and bolder work over time. But I think, had we gone in straight and this is going to be super creative and all the rest of it, it's like, well, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
What's it going to solve? How's it going to build the brand, et cetera, et cetera? And having the creative person in the room sounding like the grown up, as opposed to leaving that entirely to account management or to strategy, is a secret weapon, in my view. Yeah,
100% agree. And I think we're definitely seeing it more and more that people want their creatives to understand the commerciality. It's like it's less so rooted in what are your ideas and knowing what they are, but it's understanding what is the commercial value of them and how do you explain that and make that sort of like translation to your clients. Because I think a lot of people, especially at that junior level, they think everyone gets it. They think everyone's thinking the same as what they're thinking, and it's that sort of translation, so to speak.
Yeah, and commercial value or societal value or cultural value, and obviously they all relate back to sort of commerce, unless it's a not-for-profit or an NGO. But just knowing why we're even presenting this idea in the first place in the context of your business or your cause.
So you left the account side, started in creative.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that. How did that happen? Or what happened from there, sorry?
So we did a few, I was working as a waiter during the day, during night, and working on the portfolio during the day with my partner Jim. We didn't go to college. We just sort of worked on a portfolio, and our college was taking it round different agencies,
handing it out.
Yeah, I mean, it was a days where you didn't have a website. You just took your portfolio round. So that's a sort of quite a Dickensian apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got a couple of placements that turned into a job at M&C Saatchi. We were there for a bit, and then we kind of busted out and got into BBH,
Mm-hmm.
Which was the kind of foundation
Yeah.
of a career. But yeah, I think probably knowing a little bit about the business, and being probably more pragmatic than other placement teams is probably what scored us our first placement turning into a job.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we were kind of lucky, I think, that John O'Keefe, who was at the time the ECD at BBH,
Mm-hmm.
kind of saw something in our book, and saw something in us that, and got us in. Because I'm not sure our book, if I look back on it now, the book, as it was then, was sort of BBH standard.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we got a lucky break.
I mean, there's like luck as part of everything, isn't it? But
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
all the rest of it too. So then you were there for 7 years?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you think that your time spent there has shaped your career? Obviously going into somewhere from sort of placement, being there for such a long time, how do you think that has now shaped the creative that you are today?
Well, I think at the time BBH, I mean, it's always been a great agency, but it was in a sort of the mid noughties. It was just enjoying, such a heyday. It was
Mm-hmm.
Campaign Agents of the Year, back to back, and it really was in its pomp. And everywhere you looked, there were talented people, and it was competitive,
Mm.
and there were competitive briefings, but no one minded because you were all in in an environment where everyone was pushing each other, and if you won fair and square, you won fair and square in a sort of competitive shootout. And at the time, I was trying to write screenplays.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought advertising would be, I'd do it for a while, and then I'd get my big break in Hollywood and all the rest of it, and it never quite worked out. But I genuinely think it helped, because hard as BBH worked you, if you're doing something else on the side, another creative endeavor, it kind of reflects back into your work and fuels your work. So, our biggest career break was winning a D&AD pencil for Levi's bike,
Mm-hmm.
and that was 30 seconds, and we kind of wrote it to feel like a scene from a short film.
Yeah.
And it was about a guy on a bike and a girl's rollerblading, and he basically says, "You can hook onto my jeans," and then he slips off the pedals, and it's only at that point that she actually starts to like him,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a bit of vulnerability, and he's quite sort of full of himself to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 30 seconds. It's like a beat within a film. It's a meets cute, but with stylish Levi's values and all the rest of
Yeah.
it. But I don't think I would have been able to write that had I not been trying to write screenplays at the same time.
Yeah.
And then at the time, BBH had so many accounts where you could do brilliant work.
Mm.
There was Lynx or Axe, there was Johnny Walker, there was Bernardo's, there was British Airways, there was Levi's, obviously. And every Sunday evening, I used to get really bad Sunday evening blues as a account manager.
Yeah, the Sunday
Because-
scaries.
Yeah, because I loved advertising. I just hated the bit that I was in,
Yeah.
or was frustrated by the bit I was in, because I wanted to be on the creative, and I was kind of so close to it,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't allowed to touch it.
Yeah.
And I found that deeply frustrating to the point where I wasn't enjoying going into work on a Monday. Whereas when I was at BBH, every Sunday evening or Monday morning, you would walk in excited
Mm-hmm.
about the prospect of doing some great work on some of these great brands. I mean, there was a high standard generally, but pretty much 30% of the briefs you could get on any Monday morning
Yeah.
would be for one of these pedigree accounts.
Mm.
And you kind of go, there's such a privilege. If any agency where you can get to, 30% or over, where you've got pedigree accounts that are delivering consistent excellence. That is so exciting for a creative at any level, whether you're a junior creative or the CCO, and it's so exciting for the whole team to walk in thinking that, you've got a chance of one of those briefs.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it breeds into that competitiveness as well in such a good way of, you're in a department full of people that are feeling that excited and full of people who are as energized and probably as talented as well as like you and approaching those briefs as well. So it must have been interesting to sort of climb the ranks within that agency as well, and starting out from junior and working your way up over the years.
Yeah.
Do you think that did your excitement for the briefs change at all the more experience that you got?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we got more skilled, I guess, and we developed our craft. But we didn't actually. The nature of the role doesn't, in my view, change much between junior and senior. You just get bigger briefs and more responsibility and a bit more autonomy. The real shift, and we'll probably talk about that, is from senior creative to creative director, which is a very different job. But yeah, and we were just genuinely enjoying making great work in an atmosphere where there was a really high bar.
Yeah.
Other people were doing the same. And excitement is, I think it's such an important word. Can we talk about, there are those sort of crappy Instagram inspirational quotes like "do what you love" or "do what makes you happy." Do I love advertising? No, not every day. Does advertising make me happy? No, sometimes it makes me super stressed and all the rest of it. But do what you're excited about.
Yeah.
100%. The times when you're not excited by working in a creative industry like advertising are the times you need to start worrying, because you've got to feel that excitement. Because if you don't feel it, people around you won't feel it, and certainly the viewers or who you're trying to reach won't feel it. And whether that's as a CCO excited about the potential of a company or a new brand or some talent that you've just hired, or as a junior excited about what your first brief might be on the first day when you turn up as placement, like that's the constant. I think it's like, how do you stay excited? How do you generate excitement in others? And then, how does that translate into work that is exciting or exciting people in the outside world?
Yeah, and it's such a progressive industry as well. It's consistently growing and changing.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's also that element of excitement. No matter how long you've been in the industry or how experienced you are, there's always going to be excitement of what's next, what's to come, and how do we get there as well, which I think is such an interesting sort of concept as like an industry-wide thing, because I don't think that you'll get that in many other situations.
Yeah, I mean, it changes the whole time, and you've got to be open to that. And if you kind of see change as a burden, here's another thing I've got to get my head around, it's going to feel like a drag anchor. If you kind of go, well, that's exciting, I can do something this year that no one, or either I couldn't do last year because I didn't have the skill set, and you've learned something, or with technology and all the rest of it, we can do something this year that no one could have done last year, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
So you kind of, it's somewhere between being excited, and then how does that translate into the way you manage change and the way that you grow in skill set, in personal skills, in the different areas where you might be able to produce an idea. I think the excitement and the energy that come from all of those is pretty much the secret sauce.
Yeah. So you went from BBH into creative director role at Widens.
Yes.
Really keen to, I know you kind of touched on it before, of like the biggest sort of change is moving from senior into a creative director role. How did you find that shift, and how did you find suddenly being responsible for accounts, teams, that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of had a double. So I moved with my partner Jim, and we kind of had a double whammy, which was moving from BBH to Widens.
Yeah.
Is a monumental shift, and then there was senior creatives to creative directors. So just to illustrate, on our first day at BBH, the head of sort of creative services came in and said, what you've got to understand about BBH is we learn from our clients, and we share the same values as them.
Right.
So we've learned from Audi the importance of a production line, and we are a factory for fame, and we've learned from Levi's the importance of originality. But it was a fame factory, and that was part of their thing. And then 7 years later, first day at Wieden & Kennedy, and the CEO came in to talk to us and said, the thing you've got to know about Wieden & Kennedy or W&K is that we love chaos. So you went highly structured, strategic, nose cone, get to a proposition, explode out, and then craft it, BBH way. Weiden's way is kind of or certainly at the time was feel your way to an idea, put loads of stuff on a wall, don't commit to anything, don't let the cement harden, and then something brilliant will emerge. And when you look at their track records, I mean, both those agencies were on absolute fire during that time. Weiden's was doing the great, Write the Future for Nike, all that Honda Choir, Honda Cog, Honda Guru, they were at the top. Three Pony, they were doing brilliant work as well.
Yeah.
But it was totally different, and it always baffles me or intrigues me rather, that two great agencies at the top of their game kind of just operated so entirely differently, and yet it wasn't like they're producing identical work, but at the end of the day our product is the same. The same. It's like it's a 60-second spot, or it's at the time there was far more limited choices of media, so the kind of our output was pretty similar shapes, but the way that each agency, the process and the culture was so different.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a culture shock.
I bet on your first day you were both looking at each other thinking, what on earth is going on? And
then when you put in CDing on top of that, I mean, I guess the reality is we came in as CDs, but we were doing probably more writing.
Yeah.
And then CDing. Hands-on. We were looking after the 3 accounts. And that took a bit of getting used to. And it was only probably really until we got to AMV that we were CDing proper, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And what was the shift from Wieden & Kennedy to AMV? Did it go back to being more structural? Was it kind of like a love child of both? I'm intrigued of how that changed.
Definitely more structured. But I think, because I know this part of this pod is about, engaging young talent and all the rest of it, and what are their lessons, career lessons, is, I'm not sure that we were at the top of our game at Weiden's, because they have such a sort of specific way of doing things, and we'd learned 7 years the BBH way, so it took a while to unlearn it. But we learned a hell of a lot in those 2 years, and actually took some of that to AMV. So we kind of said, okay, we operate better in a more structured environment. So we've gone back to an agency like that. But what have we learned? What can we bring? And Dan Wieden had this brilliant expression, dial up the crazy. And, we said to Alex and Adrian and to Paul Brazier, who hired us, we're going to bring a bit of Weiden's to AMV, and let's try and make some work that doesn't feel like AMV work, because at the time back in 2012, it was probably a bit more big brand, sort of more comfortable Middle England than it has been since. And I think that ambition to bring some, not necessarily crazy, but some more provocation into the work definitely helped us when we got the opportunity on Bodyform. So I guess even if you don't land brilliantly in an agency, what can you take from that job, that experience? And if you take out some things and you find another environment, to plant them or to replant them, that can be enormously fruitful.
I think a lot of it's that recognition on your side as well of thinking, hey, maybe this isn't for us and this setup isn't where we can thrive best. But like you said, taking the opportunity as it comes and still getting stuck in so you can learn and you can work out how then you are going to plant those seeds. And it's kind of seeing them as more of like it's like a lily pad career move, isn't it? Of where if we hop into this place and sort of gather all the tools that we can here and learn, where else then can we go and set up? Like, I think that's something that an analogy I use a lot with more junior and midweights of not everything has to be your final place. If you get there and it is amazing, but if not, you're always going to learn and you're always going to pick up skills.
Yeah, and no agency is perfect.
Exactly.
It's like, there are some, like, we were lucky in that 10-year period to be at probably the 2 best agencies in London back to back. But they're all so different, and 2, they're, all agencies have flaws, so you're never going to find the perfect place. And because it doesn't exist, and even the best place for you is not perfect. So it's kind of you've got to learn stuff along the way, and some of that is learning what's good for you. Some of it's learning, well, that's not the kind of environment I want to be in. But there's always something to be taken.
Yeah, it's rolling your sleeves up and getting stuck in, isn't it? And sort of going along for the ride with it into that next step. So then you went to AMV, you were there for 9 years.
Yep.
How was it being there at such what I feel was such a special time for the agency? How was that time there? How was that journey?
Again, I mean, it was a privilege. It was quite odd for me. Brilliant, but odd for me because I'd started as a grad there in accounting.
Oh yeah, of course. That must have been such a weird full circle moment.
Yeah, so coming back in 12 years later. Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. There were some faces that I recognised, and I kind of you knew the culture, so there was a lot of. I sort of felt a little bit like coming home. But, as sounds a bit egotistical, but as a conquering hero, because I sort of left as a junior account exec who wasn't very good at client services and come back as a CD who had a lot to offer. Yeah, so I really enjoyed it, and it was what I think was brilliant about MV at the time. They had loads of big brands, and they did proper grown up work on those big UK fabric brands and some global stuff. And they were really kind of focused on where the creative opportunities were, but it was kind of a gradual build. Right. If you look at, especially under Alex and Adrian, how the creative bar was raised year on year on year. That was kind of over a 5-6 year period across the agency. And actually our journey on body form pretty much mirrored that as well. It's like, it was part of that kind of building up the creative reputation and the bar in the agency. And you go to AMV. Well, so when I was there first as a grad, they were doing, it was all the Tony K Volvo spots like Twister, Surfer, with Jonathan Glazer for Guinness. It was the height of AMV's sort of early noughties, kind of storytelling and brilliant filmmaking, and then you had the Economist headline competition and all the rest of it, and the entire department were fighting to get headlines. But like when we rejoined, I think 2012, it wasn't at those heights. Yeah. But it kind of felt like it was
like a resurgence.
A resurgence. I mean, not all at once, but over 5 years, it felt like becoming, and then that culminated in Agency of the Year at Cannes in 2021.
Yeah, I think it must have felt so exciting to feel that build year on year as well, and know that you are part of almost like something greater and rooted into a big change within an agency as well. And I think especially getting somewhere who were at their heyday back to that level must have been such a energizing environment to be a part of.
Yeah, it was. I mean, more than, I guess, because it happened over quite a long time. Yeah. It wasn't like the sudden sort of rush of blood to the head, or like, oh my, it wasn't like, the way that, Uncommon have started and in 5 years just sort of swept everything before them. It wasn't that, where, every week there was something amazing sort of coming out. But it was that sense of we're really sort of feel comfortable here, and comfortable in the best way, like psychologically safe. We feel like we're valued. We can make mistakes and all the rest of it. So it was that perfect sweet spot of, being, it's like you don't want to be in the cold shower and you don't want to be in the warm bath.
Yeah.
And it was like you felt comfortable and valued and able to express yourself and take risks. But at the same time, you could see that it was getting better, and you could see there were opportunities. And a lot of those opportunities were, to use the word again, exciting. So it was a sort of combination of comfort and excitement, I think.
Yeah, that combination as well is so, I think, not appreciated. Like being in a safe environment where, like you say, you can make mistakes and you can feel confident in the sense of, well, not everything's going to be the one, but the one will sort of come, or that big like famed piece will come, because we know we're in an environment where we can do it. They think we can do it, and we're back to do it as well. I think it's like that sort of switch between, are we doing this out of fear, or like you said earlier, are we doing this because we love it and we're like, we want to make the next big thing, if that makes sense. So it's that real sort of sweet spot. We need to talk about body form. I'm like, tell me all. I'm just keen to know. I think it's the pieces of work that people will obviously still be looking to as such like pivotal pieces. And I think it's so intriguing to me of just getting under the skin of it. And I think you sort of touched on earlier, it was such more of a relationship building as well as the creative side of things. So I'm keen just to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that of the the four campaigns that that built that brand reputation and the culture shaping work that came out of it were, there was Red Fit, which was a sport film, then there was Blood Normal, then there was Viva La Volva, and then there was Women's Stories, and all of them had a film at their heart and a activation or series of activations. So I think that combination of emotion and action, storytelling, and actually doing something in the world was brilliant, and I think it's a really good blueprint for how you get the best of both worlds. Because if you do an activation on its own, but you don't tell the story of it, it can feel a bit dry. And if you just tell the story in a film, and people say, well, what have you done? So, but of those four campaigns, 2 were written by Caio and Diego, brilliant Brazilian creatives, and 2 were written by Nick and Nadia, who are now CCOs at AMV. So you had, we had brilliant creatives. And we had a brilliantly tenacious account team, and a brilliant strategy unit led by Margot Revol, who kind of speaks about reproductive rights and women's bodies and social stigmas, as if she's speaking at the Sorbonne. She's a highly intellectual French strategist, and sometimes she basically read everything there is to know, culturally immersed herself, and then we had fearless clients. One of them, Martina, at one point said, I'm going to lose my job over this, but fuck it, let's do it anyway.
I think that's usually the best part, when you're like, this is going to be good.
Yeah, so you kind of go, like, you've got a client who's ex-agency and wants to do great work. You've got tenacious, committed client service account management team. You've got brilliant strategists. And we had some of the best creatives in the business. And, like, my job was not to fuck it up. And I think, like I said earlier, my key role was, like, how do you create a sense of trust and conditions in which those risks could be taken. And some of it is about how big a risk you're asking any clients to take at any particular time, and some of it is what's at stake here is higher than just selling more product. I think when you've got a genuine societal purpose, which we orientated ourselves around, smashing menstrual taboos and sort of going broader than that in subsequent campaigns, every fight becomes so much easier. Well, it's not even a fight, it's a discussion, but you can have a heated argument, but because you know what's at stake. It's not just about selling more product or increasing metrics here. You hope and you believe that all of that will follow, but you're trying to do something bigger. And that everyone just raises their game and they take more risks and they're braver and they're more willing to put their necks on the line, as Martina and Tanya, the brilliant clients, did. But if the question is how it started, so there was a year at Cannes where P&G won a whole bunch of stuff, or Like a Girl, they did Touch the Pickle in India, they had a Mexican campaign where one of the indigenous cultures in Mexico didn't have any words for female anatomy, so women of that culture couldn't go to the doctors and sort of describe something that was wrong accurately. So they kind of invented a language that they could use, or words within that language that they could use. And all three of them swept up. And I was so frustrated. I sent an email saying, this is embarrassing. Like, we're in the same category.
Yeah,
we're a great agency. Why aren't we competing with them? So we carved off, I think it was we carved off a little bit of budget from their marketing spend and said, can we have, I know, pittance, it was like 250k or 300k from their entire global marketing budget to do something that is a brand activation that's going to, get you noticed. And their clients went, yeah, because it's low risk, right? It was a fraction. And it's like, if it didn't work out,
Fine.
Very little lost. And of course they fell in love with the idea, and 300k became 1.5 million, and that was Redfit, and it wasn't just a film. We built a whole exercise program that was tailored to different phases of the menstrual cycle. And then because that, they were, Time was writing about it and all the rest of it, they could see the earned value, the earned media value of being that kind of brand, who's A, being provocative, and B, being purposeful and making a positive change. And then we went, but we hadn't shown blood. We'd shown blood, but not period blood.
Yeah.
So the next thing was, okay, that's what we've got to do in the next
Let's
one.
go again.
That's blood normal. And then we got bands, so we used the band to our advantage and pixelated the blood, and that created even more outcry. So there was a sort of the creative judo of that. Then there was, we've got this shower range or intimate care range to sell, got nothing to do with periods. But, so much of the category was sort of making women feel kind of like they were dirty or unclean, and so, we kind of lent into effectively the shame. So I might have to start that one again. But basically the rest of the category felt like it was on a mission to shame women.
Yeah.
So we just did the opposite, and like the antidote to shame is joy. So let's create joy in any form we can, whether it's celebration of diversity, whether it's of different, genitalia, whether it's different media, mixed media, animation, the song, Barbie jokes, camel toes, all the rest of it. But, it was like shameless and fun and funny and joyful, and and then that translated into the activations. And then Womb Stories, Womb Stories was probably the biggest learning, because Margot, brilliant strategist I talked about, had this notion that like the only way that we could tell a comprehensive story of kind of women's bodies was to kind of lean into all the different facets of what it's like to live with a womb, through different life stages and even your different wants and needs at any one time. And we kind of put it into the department and no one cracked it. So I said, I've always believed in simplicity rather than complexity. I said, we need to simplify this brief. Yeah. We're trying to put too much in here. And she said, no, I really believe in it because it's true, and I'll come on to talk about kind of listening to your team in a bit, but it was true, but at the same time, it was really complex.
Yeah.
So we agreed, well, we'll put a simple brief in, and then let's give the complex brief, your brief that you still believe in, to Nick and Nadia, because they've already done the brilliant work on Blood Normal, and so they're likely to crack it, and they did, and Margot was right.
Yeah.
And actually, because the brief was true, as long as you could find a way to articulate that truth, or in this case, those truths, plural, and do it as brilliantly as they did it, and that answered that brief, and actually the answer to the simple brief was nothing like as good, obviously, because it's not as multi-layered.
Yeah.
And I think what I learned over 5 years, but specifically in that instance, is, creative leadership is, in modern creative leadership, is not pretending to have all the answers. But, when you're a man on a brand or an account, which is all about effectively selling feminine hygiene, you biologically can't have all the answers.
Yeah, you've got to sort of understand that.
Yeah, and it's like I can tell you if this feels fresh and original, and if I think it's going to do the business job that it needs to do. But I can't tell you how it makes me feel as a woman, because I'm not one.
Yeah.
And I think you just become a lot better, or I know I became a lot better at listening to other people than I might have done otherwise. So I kind of, I think it was really formative, both as a creative director and probably as a person over those 5 years, actually, genuinely listening to and valuing other people's opinion that was probably more, not probably, definitely more valid than my own.
It's the leaning into the vulnerability as well. And I think when you're in a leadership position too, it's hard to admit that, yes, I clearly don't know all the answers because I'm clearly not of that demographic. And like you said, you can't explain how something's making you feel. But I think there is an element that seems more common now, that people can take that step back and say, you need to educate me on this, or you need to help me on this.
Yeah.
And just being able to take that sort of seat and listen as well. I think that there is power in being able to say, I don't know, and I need to take your lead. And your team from that will have felt so empowered as well.
Hopefully, they were pretty fucking powerful already. but you said admit, and so I don't. The luck in that situation was, you kind of say, I don't know about this, but I couldn't know about it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to admit anything.
Yeah.
It was just, the facts are.
Yeah, you need to teach me.
You need to teach me. Whereas in other situations where it's more nuanced, where you might have to admit you don't know something that you should do.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? I didn't have to admit, well, I should know this, but I don't. It's like, I couldn't have known it. So but I'm here to listen. And that made it so much easier, because you weren't having to sort of pretend that you knew something that you didn't, which I think sometimes happens.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for running me through that. It's so interesting. Like, it's such a body of work that I've always obviously admired from afar, but it's interesting to understand that where it sort of was born from, and it was much more of it's almost like a show and tell, isn't it? An educational piece to them of saying, look what we can do if you give us that space and allow us to do it.
But I think that's all you need is like a little crack in the door, and you kind of go, just trust us, or don't even trust us, just give us a modicum of your budget and some of our time to show what this might look like, and then you build it. So, it's that sort of dream big, start small.
Yeah.
And you never know quite where it's going to go. When, like, after Blood Normal, and we'd done 2 very strong ads about blood and periods, and then it was this shower gel, intimate care range.
Yeah.
Like, oh Christ, so how do we do that? And then Viva La Volva was totally different again. And the joy of it was actually, although the teams were consistent, actually each time the work pivoted very different. Like, it's very clear and consistent in its purpose. Yeah. But each execution and each campaign is very different from each other. And I love that. I love that variety within, you're all going in one direction, but you're keeping people guessing, as opposed to, here's another ad,
Yeah, no one could predict it.
That looks like the last one. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
it was genuine. Like, we used to sit around and go, they're never going to see this guy.
Yeah, I would love to have been a fly on the wall of you, like, pitching those initial things and been like, so we've done this, and now, like, this is where we're going to go, and just seeing their faces thinking, like, how on earth have you even come up with this?
But even I mean, there was a moment in the genesis of Viva La Volva. So between us, and especially Jim, Margot, and Kai and Diego, they got this sort of brilliant script which was about vulvas in all their different shapes and sizes and glorious diversity, singing, or no, sort of singing and dancing. But we didn't have the music,
right?
And I think it was kind of set to music.
Okay.
It was going to be like a music video, but no one, I don't think, unless I misremembered it, no one had said, right, okay, they're going to be singing, and then Kim Gera came in and they're going to be singing, and by the way, they're going to be lip syncing, and I'm going to give lip syncing a whole new kind of meaning, and they're going to be singing this song, and it was like, holy fuck, that is, that's next level.
Yeah.
And that was a brilliant meeting, because you could see Tanya and Martina go.
You're like,
but then they got it, and it was like, yeah, let's do it. If we're going to do it, let's do it properly.
I mean, that's so true, isn't it? If you're going to do something a bit mad, you may as well go all out and like do it the whole way. So interesting. So now you are partner and CCO at T&PM.
Yeah.
Intrigued to know more about the plans for the agency after the recent merger. I think a lot of people know T&P from the sort of old school heritage days, and you're in very much a new wave now, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I think we're still figuring that out, to be honest.
Which is half the fun.
Yeah, it's half the fun. I mean, I think, so T&P, or the AMP partnership, or even before that, CHI, on the creative side, has always been an innovative place, I think. One of the reasons I joined there as opposed to another agency is I'd seen work like Lexus hoverboards and RNIB pregnancy test, and it was work that wasn't advertising, didn't look like advertising, making stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm really drawn to that, especially with all the new possibilities around that. So, and they'd also been innovative as a business in the way they'd set themselves up with different models and all the rest of it. So I think when the kind of the possibilities of AI kind of began to emerge last year, and then you look at how AI can help kind of springboard creative, but also buy media and optimize media, it kind of made total sense. That if you're ever going to bring them together, creative and media, that now is the time.
Yeah.
Because there is a loop there that only works if you've got really tight integration of creative and media. But what excites me, loads of clients are kind of looking to reduce complexity in their agency setup and all the rest of it. So there's obviously huge benefits and efficiencies and what have you for the clients in terms of integration. But what really excites me is that it's not just integrations, it's innovation at the heart of it. And I think, and it's not just, what can AI do next? It's I think the focus on innovation driving integration has actually catalyzed or rekindled a love for innovation in the agency.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I see as the real benefit is, what can we do differently that we weren't doing as an agency last year, or that, to my point I made earlier, no one could have done last year, because things have moved on, and you can play with data, and you can play with AI, you can build a game, and those kind of things. And I think that's where I want to take the agency. We will always have, like a lot of agencies, bread and butter storytelling, storytelling and AV and content as our bread and butter. We've got a huge amount of social content work, and we've got specialists in that, and then on top of that, there's now this sort of innovation piece, and I think we've got five pieces out in the first 6 months of this year.
Amazing.
Which are all sort of way more innovative than we were doing last year. So I think you kind of go big, filmic, populist storytelling, sharp, agile, social, often native sort of content creation rather than, overblown stuff on social, innovation. And then the missing piece, or the piece to come, is how do you exploit media in a way that really delivers on creativity. So like when you bring creative thinkers and media thinkers together, what can you do that is genuinely, works for the client, but also makes a bit of a noise. And quite often that's taking a brand or an idea into a different place. So whether that's, just citing other examples of other agencies, so like that during lockdown when Heineken sponsored the closed bar shutters and turned those into ad spaces that could earn revenue for the bar. It's
smart.
kind of oldest media, but no one ever thought to use it as media, and they did, and it was brilliant. Last year earlier this year at South by Southwest, there was like one of the featured pieces was Grand Theft Hamlet, which was Hamlet staged and played out entirely within Grand Theft Auto, and you can just go like the possibilities of, old ideas in new spaces or new ideas in new spaces. Both of them are kind of new, and by showing up somewhere differently, you get people to engage with you differently. It feels new, it feels exciting, and I kind of go, and that's the sort of the fourth bit of the puzzle. You get creative media, creative innovation, creative storytelling, mostly in film, and the creative potential within social. And you kind of go, if we can do interesting stuff in all four of those, but more importantly, if we can do them for one brand or in one campaign, in loads of them, in more than one, then you've got like full service creativity. People talk about full service agencies. What does full service creativity look like across that range of channels and opportunities and ways of thinking?
And it's creating like the synergy between all of them that is so exciting. And I think it also allows you mentioned right at the start that you'd hired in people from different spaces and different backgrounds, and people sort of moving into creative from other like walks of life. And I think you've incubated now this environment where people can come in, and these mad ideas and mad things and mad like pulling from different worlds is now so like plausible and so easy for you to create and build on, which I think is super, super exciting.
I think we've still got a lot of creatives who are kind of brilliant at the more traditional elements and the craft. We've hired a whole bunch of content creators who have never been near ad school or an ad brief, and they're just going, okay, if I was gonna put this on TikTok for myself, I'd do this, and we kind of educate them a little bit on kind of, well, you need to weave in the brand messaging there, and without diluting their style. So we've got a hub of those who are now in 3 days a week, and they do their own content creation, for their own brand or channel, whatever, for the rest of the week. We were really lucky that we had actually, within the innovation space, we had about 3 or 4 creatives who'd been at, tech companies or innovation agencies, or been at RGA, earlier in their careers, those kind of places, who were just dying to do more innovation. So as and when the opportunities presented themselves, they basically wrote themselves into a job. They put their hand up for, well, I'll lead this workshop or I'll lead that, and by dint of that, they kind of wrote a new role. So they're now innovation creatives rather than straight up creatives. And they're so happy because they're doing the thing that they always wanted to do, and they haven't had to change agency, and they kind of see that they're adding value in a way that they weren't before, because they couldn't maximize their interests and their passions. Like one of them said, I used to have to do all this stuff, this innovation stuff. I did it as a passion,
Yeah.
as a hobby at the weekend, and now I'm getting paid to do it and make stuff with it, and it's so fulfilling. So yeah, it's great. I mean, the one of the privileges of being a CCO and being a creative leader is you get to create opportunities for people, whether that's bringing in people into the industry, like the content creators, or getting people to find another gear, and creating opportunities that way.
Yeah, it's like creating pathways for people,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
And almost recognizing something in them that they may have not actually like worked out yet.
Yeah.
And helping them sort of navigate that to then get that fulfillment, like you said, about the person who was saying, I was doing it as a passion thing on the weekend.
Yeah,
Suddenly like, wow, I feel so much more fulfilled, and I don't need to spend my weekends doing now what is my day job.
Yeah.
Which must feel pretty cool.
It does. And we kind of have a way of talking about it, and it sounds a bit sort of over branded because of the AND partnership, and now we're T&P. But instead of T-shaped people, we're looking for AND-shaped people. So like, you've got a core skill, but what's your AND? What else are you going to bring to your creative life, to the agency, to an account? And A, because that's valuable, and B, because that's growing.
Yeah.
That's growth for you. And once you've mastered that, and you might then go, find another one. But it's just that sense that, I don't think the modern creative can be just a pure play creative. They need an and we're just trying to create an environment where they can fulfill those.
I love that. I don't think it sounds over-branded. I think it sums it up perfectly.
Good.
Final question, and one that might maybe be the hardest, but I'm really interested to know, for you, outside of sort of awards, fame, recognition on the work, is there a particular campaign or body of work that you've made throughout your career that is a personal favourite? One that you hold really closely or love the most? Your favourite campaign that you've made.
Well, we've already spoken about Bodyform.
Yes.
So I won't speak about that,
Okay.
even though, clearly those are seminal pieces of work. I think the one that I got the most out of was a campaign called Address Pollution, where we used air pollution data, and we kind of tabbed that to postcodes. And so we had, so everywhere in London, we had it to 20 meters squared, and you could put it to a postcode and therefore to a property. And you could we then did a sort of calculation based on a survey of what each property would be worth if people knew what the air pollution was like. So it was based on, sorry, so I start this again. Okay, you asked the question.
Okay.
Right.
Final question.
Yeah.
Outside of fame, recognition, awards, that side of things, is there a particular campaign or piece of work that you've done throughout your career that you hold really close?
Yeah, so I won't talk about Bodyform because we've already talked about that. But Address Pollution was a data-driven campaign. And if you'd asked me 20 years ago, you'd be working with data, I'd go, what the fuck's data?
What is that?
So again, this point about growth, that there's always something new, there's something exciting. If you're curious, throw yourself into something, learn about it, and you will grow, and you do exciting things. So 2 Kiwis got off the plane, and they were appalled by the quality of air in London, and by the cost of housing. At the same time, I've been networking within purpose circles, and I bumped into this guy who had King's College data for air pollution in London, but sort of geo-specific to 20 square meters.
Okay.
And he said, I've got this data, I don't know what to do with it. How can you tell a story around it? So I said, well, bring it to AMV, where we did the campaign, and we'll do something with it. And I gave this brief to these 2 young, Ben and Scott, these 2 young Kiwi creatives. And like I said, they had that insight. And within about 4 days, they came back and they'd sort of tied the data, its effect on what people would pay for that property if they knew about the air pollution, together. And so you're basically using the leverage of the £1 trillion London property market to make people aware of and give a shit about air pollution.
So smart.
And, you know, it made the Channel 4 News, it got adopted by property portals and all the rest of it. And what I love about it is, like, it was the only way to make Daily Mail readers care about air pollution.
Yeah, something really important.
Something really important. My home, my castle.
Yeah.
And, you know, and in the end, I mean, it was so satisfying to do because it was for a cause I care about, an issue I care about. It was using a totally different mindset and skill set, which is what do you do with data. It was some young creatives who came up with it, you know, and in the end, it made the news. It caused a stir, you know, and we ended up winning the UN Grand Prix for health at Cannes.
Amazing.
Anyway, so, you know, you do all the interesting stuff, and then the awards and the fame that you talked about, that kind of follows anyway.
Yeah, nice, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've absolutely loved, picking your brain, working out all, getting under the skin of all those big accounts and things. But yeah, thank you so much.